The next call is a split call. Chris Bishop, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Happy New Year to everybody. Great to be back. Great for another year. Great to be back for another year in government. I don't know what Andrew Little was up to over the break, but he accused me of going kayaking down the Hutt River, and I just want to put on the record for the House that that did not actually happen. But I did explore the beautiful vistas and the surrounds of the Hutt Valley over the break. It's great to be back. Mr. Speaker, New Zealand starts 2015 in great shape. There are challenges, no doubt about it, but we are appreciably better off as a country than we were when the National League government took office in 2008. The statistics have been well canvassed. We have one of the fastest growth rates in the developed world. 217,000 new jobs created over the last 4 years. And the members opposite used to mock the government about the Treasury forecast of 170,000 jobs in 4 years. We have smashed that target as a government and as a country. The highest labour force participation rate ever. And in particular, Mr. Speaker, I'm really happy that we have the highest female labour force participation rate ever. But it's deeper than that, Mr. Speaker, and I want to point to 3 particular phenomena that prove that the New Zealand economy is on the right track. The first is that household savings have been positive for now 5 years in a row. And again, members opposite used to talk a lot about creating a savings culture in New Zealand and making sure New Zealanders saved more. Well, New Zealanders are saving more, and one of the reasons for that, no doubt, Mr. Speaker, is the tax changes that we introduced in 2010. The second point I would point to, Mr. Speaker, is positive migration, that we have massively turned around from the situation we inherited, people literally voting with their feet, moving back to New Zealand, and more importantly, not leaving New Zealand for places like Australia. And the third thing I would point out, Mr. Speaker, is, as Mr. English pointed out, the Minister of Finance, and his contribution to the debate, the speed limit for the economy, Mr. Speaker, that's the natural growth limit that the Treasury and the other economic boffins think the economy can grow at without inflation taking off, has been revised upwards. And that's extremely important, because as you can grow faster for longer, you have a bigger impact on people's wages, and you have a bigger impact on household wealth and household disposable income. So if we can grow for the next 4 to 5 years at 3% or 4% or more, rather than the limit that we previously thought was 2%, that will have an appreciable impact on New Zealanders' lives, Mr. Speaker, and we only get that through sustained economic reform. And usually third-term governments, Mr. Speaker, slow down, they become insular, they run out of ideas. The Clark government certainly did that. Well, they ran out of ideas well before the third term, but they certainly ran out in their third term. The Muldoon government did that, Mr. Speaker, but this is a government that is active, that is vibrant, that is energetic, that has been renewed a little bit, Mr. Speaker, by my colleagues and myself in the class of 2014, and we are resolutely focused on jobs and growth for Kiwis, internationalising our economy, making us more outward-looking, and not only that, Mr. Speaker, driving better public services for New Zealanders. We're going to focus on 2 particularly important things this year and going forward into this parliamentary term. That's reforming the Resource Management Act, Mr. Speaker, to make sure it works for New Zealanders and actually delivers the outcomes we want, and in particular, social housing, Mr. Speaker. Social housing reforms outlined by the Prime Minister in the statement to Parliament and his speech are very important, Mr. Speaker. We are going to grow the number of social housing places available in New Zealand. And if you listen to members opposite, they would say that we are ripping the heart out of social housing, Mr. Speaker, but actually we're investing more money, 3,000 more places so that people can move into social housing, Mr. Speaker, 3,000 more places. We're also moving people into independence and off the state, Mr. Speaker. So at the moment there are around 3,300 people who pay market rents for their state house. They're in a Housing New Zealand house, they pay a market rent because their income is too high to access income-related rent subsidies. And those people, Mr. Speaker, are taking up a house that could go to somebody who can't afford to actually move into a private house by themselves, Mr. Speaker. So we are genuinely and in an appropriate and respectful way going to move those people on, Mr. Speaker. We're also going to make sure that state housing is in the right place and in the right size, Mr. Speaker. So 30% of people, Mr. Speaker, on the Housing New Zealand waiting list require a one-bedroom house, but that's just 9% of Housing New Zealand stock. That makes no sense. Mr. Speaker, if the members opposite, who always talk about equity and about fairness, were genuinely in favour of those things, they would back these reforms. The reforms outlined by the Prime Prime Minister and by the trio of housing ministers, Mr Speaker, are socially progressive, they are socially equitable, they are fair for New Zealanders, they're focused on tenants rather than actually who owns the house, because that's the obsession of the Labour Party, stuck in the 1970s, focusing on how many houses there are and who owns it, rather than on what's actually best for tenants, unlike this government.